And season 2, episode 3. So let's talk about this thing, all right? So I don't know about anybody else, but I'm starting to feel like The Expanse, especially with season 2, it's starting to kind of become a show that I feel like I need to kind of see next week. Now, I kind of talked about that last week, that The Expanse never really seemed like the type of show that it was like really making me want to see next week. But I feel like now it's starting to like really get to that point. Or maybe that's at least just me. Now, overall, I thought this episode was actually pretty fantastic. I feel like the theme of this episode was just like past sins, or just simply put, guilt. I feel like that was like the main theme running wild, like Hulkamania. I feel like that was the main thing kind of happening in this episode. But overall, like I said, I thought this episode was actually quite good, and there was a couple of things that I really did personally enjoy. Particularly, I would just get to this very quickly. I always like sci-fi shows, just to begin with, like Star Trek, that tend to kind of mirror real-world events. And just kind of mask it with a sci-fi setting. And I always kind of like personally enjoy that. And obviously Star Trek, I believe, was like one of the first ones to do it. But that's what The Expanse season 2 episode 3 actually really did, was kind of mirror stuff with the real world that we're kind of dealing with right now, just to begin with. So at the very beginning, the UN pretty much destroys Des Moines after the the attack on the moon from Mars, and obviously that sets up this big event that we are still leading up to a possible war. So what does it happen? Does it not happen? Who knows? Sarala is still trying to figure this shit out and trying to get contact to Fred Johnson, and that's pretty much the thing. We need answers, right? So, like I said, back to mirroring the current events, and I'm not a political guy, but you have to admit there are politics inside of The Expanse, so it's kind of bound to slightly happen a bit. So, overall, some things that I really did enjoy, just to begin with, was the fact that this episode really did touch upon immigration, Mars immigrations, patriotism, and overall even treason for the most part. When the Space Marines are talking to that guy who's an Earthling, but he also is, I guess you say from Mars or whatever it may be, they essentially were just kind of prejudicing this and just kind of judging him because he's not full-on Martian. Now, for me, some people probably would say that, Earth is considered like the United States. Not necessarily. I would probably almost say, especially in this episode, it seemed like Mars, it almost seemed like they were more like the United States. They seemed like they were the more ready and more judging a bit, and more, accepting, so to speak. I feel like that's kind of it. Or maybe that was just my thought just to begin with. And even the Absarala stuff at the very beginning where she's talking to that guy, the guy pretty much says you need to kind of do what you do best, and that's kind of make, Earth come first, which is pretty much saying almost like, United States come first. So, like I said, I thought it was very interesting that those things kind of mirrored the events. But like I said, it could just be me. But a couple other things that we really get to see was pretty much Miller, after the events of killing the doctor last week and kind of going all batshit crazy. Miller pretty much is off the ship because Holden doesn't want him, and that's pretty much it. Johnson pretty much tells him that, all right, I'm going to take these handcuffs off you, but after that, you can choose wherever you want to go, and I'll take you there, simply put. Now, after that, Miller pretty much goes on a drinking binge. He goes to the bar. He pretty much sees that kid, from last week that kind of worked with him and got shot with a jelly round or whatever. Anybody knows how that kid actually really reminded me of this YouTube guy called Omar Usef? Look him up. Just type of Omar Fitness. You'll probably find him, and I guarantee, if he actually looks like him enough, tell me that and actually give me a like just for that alone, for the most part. But he goes to a bar, he starts drinking. Amos pretty much comes in. They have this little conversation, gives him his stuff, whatever. And I actually really did like this conversation because, like I said, I like the smaller moments in The Expanse because I feel like that's where the show thrives, was the character moments. And having them kind of like drink with each other, it's just two, trigger-happy murderers drinking, having a good time. But it actually showed that these guys are just a little bit misunderstood. Their motives are not necessarily out of touch or, outrageous. They're just kind of trying to do something that they believe is right, for the most part. Even Amos kind of agreed on some of the things that Miller actually had to do, but that's the most part. That's pretty much it. Eventually, Miller does go with the, Omar Usef, and and then he eventually does see Julie Mao. He gets a new shave, he gets a new haircut, and eventually he does start to find a new purpose in life. He tries to find out what is he meant to kind of do. He finds this conduit that eventually he thinks is the cure to kind of stopping the proto-molecule. Eventually he talks to Johnson, and then they kind of, pretty much say, all right, we both got to destroy this thing, and the conduit is pretty much the way to go. That's kind of how Miller's story arc kind of went in this episode, just to begin with. Now, Naomi, let's go to Naomi real quickly. Naomi necessarily really didn't have too much in this episode. She kind of talks to Holden. They kind of have a little bit of a sex thing going on. Miller kind of, actually not Miller, Holden pretty much cockblocks himself. and is just kind of feeling regret because Naomi seemed like she's defending, Miller. And then that's pretty much it. She gets some stress taken out in a fucking handball game, which I thought was actually pretty good. Tights and spandex. You can't really go wrong with that. But overall, when she goes back to the club, I thought this was kind of a nitpick. But it seemed like the buddy that she went with changed her clothes. But it seemed like Naomi actually went with the same clothes that she was just sweating in when she was doing handball. So I was just like, is this chick literally dancing on a dance floor with sweat? Because that's kind of nasty. But that's just my thought to begin with. And I feel like that's really all she did in this episode. She was the only one that actually managed to kind of let loose a bit. But speaking of not letting loose, let's talk about Alex. Now, Alex himself is a little bit of a tough character. Sometimes he's great to kind of watch inside background, but he also does enough good stuff. But sometimes I feel like he doesn't really get that much to work with, especially since like the beginning few episodes of The Expanse. Now, in this episode, he's still feeling the effects of like the people that got lost, that got killed in the last episode, and he's still trying to feel that guilt, as I said. And he's running simulations to kind of like figure out, maybe he could have done something different, maybe he could save them, but he realizes, or he's not realizing yet, that there is no way, and I'm pretty sure we probably have, lost somebody or whatever, dog, person, the recent condom. You probably wish that you probably could have done something better to kind of like find it or do something differently. And that's pretty much what it is. So it's nice to see him kind of get something to sink his teeth into, the actor himself, and also the character kind of grow a bit, other than just saying donkey balls. That's kind of just a simple truth. Now, when it comes to Holden and Amos, they pretty much was both coinciding on the same thing. They were interrogating the prisoners. And while doing that, they pretty much found a scientist that worked at Protogen. Hell, pretty much all of them worked at Protogen, all the prisoners. But one of them specifically was kind of like a fucked up version of a prisoner for the most part, because they tweaked his brain to have no, essentially, emotion. Eventually, they realized that this guy actually knows about the protomolecule because of, Amos kind of uses, what was it, the pedophile analogy for some reason, and actually got it done, and we realized that the protomolecule is an energy-seeking thing, and that's pretty much what it is, and it doesn't kill people per se, at least according to a couple of voice recordings. People are still alive, but what we actually get to see is that Eros is actually possibly having a lot of people alive. They could be alive, they could be dead, but for some reason the protomolecule is actually building something. So when the scientist is pretty much talking, it definitely is exposition dialogue, no doubt about it, but it actually felt a little bit natural, and also there's a time and a place for exposition, at least as far as I'm concerned. When it's something very complicated, you need exposition. Otherwise, it's just going to be like, well, why don't we just put this disclaimer up? This is what the fucking protomolecule does. Warning. That's pretty much what it would be. But overall, like I said, I thought it did a good enough job, and now they pretty much have to go back to Eros in order to kind of find, what is going on. Now, Avasarala pretty much goes back to her, her spy or informant, whatever it may be, to get the message Johnson. She gets to the Johnson. She pretty much tells him that we want to stop this war. If you have any evidence, any cards left to play, lay it down on the table, and then that's pretty much it. But then Johnson realizes that this thing's got to be swept under the radar, and it is what it is. But she got her message across, and now Johnson knows, and now he's going to try to find some evidence to stop this war before it actually starts. Also, a couple other things was this simple fact that I was very impressed, and I was impressed with him already to begin with, but I forgot his name. Oh, Chad L. Coleman, right? Chad Coleman. He's impressive on here. I don't know what the fuck The Walking Dead did with him, but he didn't do anything. He has a presence on The Expanse. He does not have a presence he did not have a presence on The Walking Dead. But eventually, Holden pretty much talks to Naomi. They kind of make up for the most part, right? And eventually they pretty much say, we got to go back to Eros. We got to find out what is going on there. We got to stop this protomolecule just to begin with. So now, even though Miller's off the ship, and then Naomi says that, all right, fine, we'll do it together, because that's the best way to kind of do these things. When, as she said in the first episode, together we're stronger, or whatever, something like that. But eventually they realize that, and then now the next episodes, they pretty much have to go to Eros. Now, on top of Miller pretty much getting off the ship, everybody kind of gets wrapped up into the same thing. So Avasarala is eventually going to get wrapped up with the Holden crew. Then Miller, even though he's off the ship, he's with Johnson, so they're trying to stop the protomolecule, and everybody's going to Eros. But that's the thing. Just when you thought you were out, they bring it back in. So overall, it should be interesting to see where the next episode kind of takes itself. But overall, I fairly enjoyed it, and I'm actually quite interested in seeing it. Like I said, I thought this episode was one of the first episodes that actually made me be like, damn, I actually really want to see The Expanse next week. But then again, that's just me. Comment, subscribe, and like. Share this video if you can. I'm Chris Smith, and I'm signing out.